I'm going to welcome everyone. I like these a lot better when our wife study group is running them. Lisa, I'm looking at you and wishing you and Joel were doing doing all the work right now. But want to thank everyone. This is our third community-wide meeting. We started back in January with a neighborhood-wide meeting. We mailed to over 3,000 homes, and we got, I think we had close to 200 that night. We went over the Zoom limit. We had to update our account, and it's been a steadfast participation by the community. Almost everything you're going to see here tonight was impacted by the neighborhood, and I think it goes without saying, the community better than we do, and the devil is in the details. And so the team will go through not just the updates, because I know there'll be some people on tonight that need the full overview that haven't been involved, but we're also going to call out particular updates and improvements that we've made as a result of the neighborhood input. Next slide. This is our agenda for tonight. We're going to try to go through the different aspects of the Article 19 process, so that when we get to that part of the public process, you folks are sort of in those lanes. And I won't read through these, but obviously zoning conformity and all the different aspects are site connectivity, parking, traffic, stormwater, environmental, landscape and trees, sustainability and resiliency. And then we want to give you a sense of construction timeline, so that, the one thing I'd say, this has probably been the most interactive process I've ever been involved in for a project that wasn't seeking new zoning. And we're going to continue this. So, we don't want anyone to worry if there's any site mobilization or any moving around. We're going to be communicating with you. Our team has great construction experience, and we're all very vested with the neighborhood. So we'll just give you a sense of that at the end. And the presentation's about 50 minutes. It is comprehensive, but we'll leave about an hour for questions and answers. You can chat. We're probably not going to grab the questions as we go, unless we're really fluid. We'll save the questions for at the end, and we'll track them. Obviously, we'd love for you to stay on so you can hear the answers, but if you have to bolt and you want to put a chat question, we'll track it and make sure that we answer it. Next slide. Just want to go quickly over the community outreach. Next slide. So we mailed 3 times to the community for these meetings, but really a lot of the work got done after our meetings. Our wife study group would hold a meeting where we would respond to questions that didn't get answered at the meeting. And then we were holding almost weekly meetings where ASG would act as an umbrella group and invite other groups in to participate. So you'll see some of those groups that were involved: Friends of Jerry's Pond, Ocean Institute. All these groups were in and out of that process, and ASG did a great job of setting the agenda for each meeting and inviting folks who were interested into different areas. And it's been incredibly helpful. I mean, as of now, we are continuing to work through some issues to minimize tree impact with a subcommittee group of ASG. Every category of this proposal has been impacted by those meetings, and we're going to continue to have them. We are at the Conservation Commission. Our development area is before the Conservation Commission. It really is focused on floodplain impacts. We have another meeting on the 29th of November for folks who want to join. We'll post these meetings on our website. So just call out, we did some cool stuff. We did a walk at Jerry's Pond, where we had one of the neighborhood folks was good enough to video it. And that informed a lot of the decisions around the pond. It actually changed the location of the eco center, and like we were able to get out there with a group of interested folks and really get granular inside Jerry's Pond, which was a unique opportunity. So next slide. Oh, so this is just cool because our first meeting, we had two young people speak. One was Anusha Blum, who's an intern for the Ocean Institute. And she came out with a survey that they had done at Ringe Towers around what folks wanted from the development and what the community wanted. And you'll see at the end, we actually have a slide where we match up all those survey results with where we are now. Anusha and Mohammed, who's the second one in, both from the Ringe Ave neighborhood, talked about the Jerry's Pond piece, but they also talked about career mentoring and scholarships. So IQHQ has announced a scholarship fund. They've also announced support for Justice Starts program, their biomedical career program. But we also decided to go a step further and initiate an internship program. And this, we didn't want to wait till after we got approvals. I thought it was important that the team get to know young adults from the neighborhood, which would inform how they operate in this community. So we just finished the first program, and this was not about our development. This was about career mentoring, getting these folks in front of all different career opportunities. All of our folks did at least one class, and Ashley Martin was phenomenal managing this. And we're still in the process of the long game of helping these folks with career and employment. And it was just, I think it was great. We'll be doing another cohort of interns in a couple months. And so I just wanted to share this because this came out of the first meeting. And yes, they were paid and they were required to attend. And Ashley did a great job of making sure it was completely structured. We wanted it to be an employment-like opportunity. The next slide just goes into, I think you all know how awesome the neighborhood is. I know the neighborhood really well. It's a hard neighborhood to describe. Like, I don't know of a more diverse neighborhood anywhere. And so I pushed the team to get out there, and these are just things that have become part of the fabric of IQHQ's involvement. IQHQ sponsored a summer baseball league for kids to have opportunity in the summer. Jason Targoff, who lives a couple streets over, runs youth soccer, invited IQHQ to sponsor there. In all these cases, David and Chrissy and other team members got out there so they could see what you see every day in the neighborhood. And it's pretty unique to have a little league and a sports venue and a playground, a tot lot, and a natural habitat, and a affordable housing community, and then these three sort of distinct neighborhoods that abut us. And being out there, I think, has really helped the team understand the fabric of the community and the importance of our role in it. And these are things that we're going to do all the time. These are not one-time supports. Next. So quickly, I just want to go over, these are what I would consider to be more voluntary public benefits. So this isn't like, paths within our development area or performance areas within our development area. We think the community is going to really get a lot out of our development area. We've broken down the walls, and we want the community to own it. But these are things that are sort of outside what we needed to do that the community asked us to do. MBTA plaza improvements, obviously something everyone uses. I'm not going to get into detail because I don't want to steal JP's thunder. Communal garden, and that's going to be funded annually by IQHQ. Obviously, the Jerry's Pond Eco Center, which you'll see. Improvements to the Route 16 multi-use path, which I think all of you know is sort of dingy and not attractive and not big enough. When we started, we weren't going to touch the lots on Whittemore at all. And it just kept coming up: flood storage, trees, improvements. So we ended up going all in, and all the stormwater detention will be improved up to current standards there, with a bunch of trees being planted. We agreed to a tree nursery on the garage, which is sort of a unique thing with Green Cambridge. That's a new one for me. There'll be historic wayfinding throughout the neighborhood. This isn't a big ticket item. The reason I mention it is we will have in the next couple of weeks an interactive section on the website where, if you think a particular signage should be informed by whatever it is, industrial history, immigrant history, natural habitat, we want folks, as they go through the site, to be educated on North Cambridge and this particular site. So we're going to have plaques that tell you where you are, but also have historical references. So we want you to weigh in with pictures and ideas on the website. Obviously, we need to fix the curb that you go up over when you come in on the bus at Como Field. I mentioned the scholarship fund. That's going to be initially funded at $500,000. We've committed to $500,000 for the Justice Start program. We've been asked to study commuter rail. There's a lot of interest in commuter rail at Alewife, the quad and Alewife, to mitigate traffic. So we're going to help study that. And then IQHQ is going to maintain, secure, update the Jerry's Pond amenities, all the public access. So that number just relates to maintenance and security, et cetera, over 5 to 10 years. Next slide. I'm going to go really high level because we've done this at past meetings. This shows the approvals that we need to go after. We are proceeding under existing zoning, the zoning that the neighborhood enacted. I was around back then. There was a huge development proposed, hotel and huge kind of superstore, and the neighborhood was very concerned about contamination. So I looked at the zoning as sort of a development control and an environmental control, and we're operating under both those controls. One is under existing zoning, which caps the amount of development and obviously deals with things like parking and open space, but it also deals with the asbestos. And so we're proceeding under the asbestos protection ordinance. Jen Sweet will get into a little bit more about what that means, but obviously we made an intentional choice not to seek new development rights. The labs are shorter than usual, and IQHQ is perfectly content with that. So I think that was a helpful entry. The Article 19 large project review will be at the planning board. We'll let you know when we have a date. As I said, we're at the Conservation Commission now on the area that is where our development exists. We're going to go back later to ask for approval for the Jerry's Pond and the amenities there. So there'll be two separate processes. We will be required to make those improvements. They will be conditions in our special permit, but we need to get approvals for the revenue deriving portions of the site first. It also gives folks a little more time to work on Jerry's Pond. Howard will mention this. We may be expanding our area for order of conditions into Jerry's Pond slightly to allow for flood storage to move into the Jerry's Pond area, because ASG has expressed interest in this, and it allows us to save some trees because the flood storage does have impact on trees because they get soaked and they don't survive. So we're looking at amending our order of conditions to allow for a small area of Jerry's Pond to be connected, but the public amenities that you're going to see tonight will be part of a second process. These are technical approvals. I'm not going to go into them specifically, MEPA and other approvals, but we just wanted to share those with you. Next, and this is my last slide, and I'll shut up. Again, we're proceeding under the SD3 zoning. We'll comply with the asbestos ordinance. The use limitation agreement, I think, Jen, we are going to have to amend that, but we're not messing with the integrity of the principles of that. Height will be under 55. The zoning has a hard number that is allowed. We're going to be at 653. We're reducing the number of spaces that are currently on site. Nahit has been an advocate for the neighborhood and making sure that we don't have too much, but we have enough. I think we've done a really good job of making sure that we can look at folks with a straight face and say, not too much, but enough. And this just, what's on site is 382,000. The net new is 353,500. So obviously there's existing buildings there, but this just shows what our net new gross floor area is. And the number's not here, but I think the zoning allows something close to 735. I think it's a little higher than that, but right around there. And you'll see Chris and Howard will do a good job of explaining how we've created this site plan to minimize impacts on natural habitat and flood improvements. And really, it all lines up because we really looked to do all or nearly all of the development on existing parking lots and in existing areas that have already been disrupted. And so Chris and Howard will go further into that. I do want to now introduce David and Chrissy. Both have awesome construction backgrounds, which has been helpful because the things we say yes to, I think we can actually execute. But they've also been amazing working with the community, and I think they're familiar faces to you. So I wanted to have both David and Chrissy say a few words.
Thanks, Anthony. So as Anthony said, my name is David Surratt. I'm the Senior Vice President of Development. And I always say in the beginning of these meetings that the community has been great to work with and all the community groups. I know they're all volunteers and it's a lot of work, and they've made our project better, all their input. There's so many smart people in those groups that have helped us. The other thing is, we love being part of this community. It's a great neighborhood. Anthony pushed me to get out into the community, and I've been out there, and as he said, we're trying to sponsor and work within the neighborhood. But it's such a, you all know, it's a terrific, diverse community, and we're just happy to be there, and really want to make sure that we are good neighbors and good citizens, and of the city of Cambridge, and in general, we're just excited about the project. We think it's that much better, and I'm going to let Chrissy talk about our role as a being a good member of the community and how we take care of the environment. So thank you.
Great, thank you, David. So I'm Chrissy Gabriel, Director of Development, specific for the Alewife Park project. As David and Anthony mentioned, both have experience in the construction management field, and specifically working on projects where spaces and places are occupied. And a primary goal is always to maintain as minimal disruption to the neighbors as possible. So here at IQHQ, we truly pride ourselves on the sustainability and responsibility, and putting that at the forefront of our work, as you see here in the mission statement that we're sharing on this slide. The leadership, as well as the employees, have a true passion for the ESG initiatives. And we think that this specific Alewife Park project has exemplified that. And it's been a real honor working with the community. I think, the community members of ASG they might be sick of me saying this, but I'm always just blown away at the passion and the education and how admirable it's been with the amount of time and energy and effort put into a true successful collaboration within this process and design. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Chris Haynes, our project lead with Gensler Architects, to go over a little bit more about the project.
Great, thank you, Chrissy. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see a lot of you again, and welcome to those joining for the first time. My name is Chris Haynes. I'm with Gensler, the architects for the project. I'm also joined by two of my colleagues, Joanne Fernando and Devay Gibson, on the call as well. So we'll start this portion of the presentation with the existing site plan to kind of orient everyone to the site. At the very north, the very top of the plan is Whittemore Avenue to the north. At the very southern part is Rindge Avenue, and you can see Jerry's Pond just north of that, Russell Field and the MBTA head house sort of through the middle of the site. And then where a lot of the existing buildings and parking lots are to the north in the northern part of the site. And currently the site is inaccessible and really a barrier to neighborhood connectivity. And we heard early on from the community that connectivity, access, expanded bike and pedestrian paths, and sustainable new buildings were very important to the neighborhood. And as Chrissy mentioned, very important to IQHQ as well. So I'll spend the next several slides outlining how IQHQ and the design team responded to these community comments, concerns, and ideas. So the next slide zooms in a bit on the northern part of the site. So this includes the existing buildings along Whittemore Avenue and between Harvey Street to the east and then Route 16 to the west. And a lot of these existing buildings are built out to the property line and don't allow for setbacks or green space or buffer to the neighborhood. The next slide continues with some additional existing photos, just to give you a bit of the character of the existing buildings. A lot of them are older vintage and will be replaced or upgraded with much more newer energy efficient buildings. You can also see the existing site includes a lot of paved area that contributes to heat island effect. And this was one thing that we've heard from the beginning and through previous community meetings, that heat island mitigation is very important to this neighborhood, and you'll hear a bit more about that through our presentation and toward the end with the sustainability section. All right, so next slide includes a diagram which really reinforces the barrier aspect to the current development. So along the northern portion next to Whittemore Ave, there's no permeability or connectivity through the site. The Harvey Street access is locked. There's no access. And the east side of the site there's no permeability. So it acts really as a barrier to the neighborhood for connectivity through the site. And the other thing I want to highlight in this is you'll see the dark gray buildings. Those indicate those that will be removed or demolished as part of the project. And then on the sort of upper left of the plan are two existing buildings to remain, and we'll go through those in a little bit more detail in the next slide. So this slide includes the overall proposed site plan from Whittemore all the way to the north to Renge Ave to the south. So this includes the Jerry's Pond Public Access Plan and includes the development area to the north. On the right side, we've included 5 of the main design principles for the project that were developed based on input specifically from the community. So one by one, the first being building over existing developed areas. You'll see that all of the new buildings and are northern on the site to be developed over existing buildings or existing paved areas. So that's a first design principle. The second is to locate them in those northern areas to minimize the impact on floodplain. And Howard Moser from VHB will talk a little bit more in detail about that. In addition, a minimize impact on trees. The third main design principle is create meaningful neighborhood connections. The fourth, expanding pedestrian and bicycle paths. And then the last is creating public access to the site and also to the Jerry's Pond area to the south. The two buildings, and if you go back one real quick, thank you. So the two buildings in the upper left corner are buildings 1 and 2 on our existing buildings to remain. They're sort of white there in the plan, exactly. To the east and the south are 3 new proposed buildings. And then the smallest footprint building to the south is the proposed parking structure. All new construction is being proposed under current zoning as Anthony outlined in the zoning section. New buildings are energy efficient and include biosolar roof installations. And there'll be more on that in the sustainability section. Building 1 is a newer building in good condition and will remain. Building 2 will have a completely new exterior and mechanical systems that create a much more energy efficient building. And then many of the improvements to the overall site will be made to the as part of the new development. Number one is all the new buildings will follow setbacks, which will provide landscape buffer areas and open space between buildings in the neighborhood. And secondly, the new buildings and the new mechanical systems within buildings 1 and 2 will improve the overall site acoustics. The current noise levels were measured and compared against the modeled sound levels from the new buildings, and the new development sound levels will be lower than the current measured noise level. So an overall improvement to the neighborhood. On the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the connections that were one of the design principles of the project. So there's 6 major connections on this slide that connect the 3 neighborhoods, Whittemore, Harvey Street, and Renge Ave. These are all really important connections, and they were based on what we heard from the neighborhood groups and in previous community meetings. So starting at the top, the Whittemore neighborhood noted 2 main connections. One is the Whittemore Gateway, which is sort of in the center of the Whittemore Street. That links the neighborhood to the north, toward the south, to the garage and the MBTA head house and point south. The second one in the upper right corner is a connection to the Whittemore linear path. The neighborhood noted that this was a really important connection to the linear path. We heard you, we created that multimodal path, and that also includes a new blue bike station for easy access to the linear path. So the Harvey Street connection next on the right side. So currently there's no access at Harvey Street. And we heard 2 important points regarding this connection. Number one, it should be for pedestrian and bikes only. And number 2, there should be no vehicle access. So no neighborhood cut-throughs. There will only be emergency vehicles at Harvey Street. And then the 4th connection is at the MBTA head house in the center of the drawing. So the project is expanding. There's a current path there. They're expanding that, making that wider. So more space for bikes and pedestrians along that connection. And then at the southern part of the site, you can see 2 arrows. And those are, one is the Jerry's Pond public access connection and the Route 16 path enhancements on the west side. Both will be covered later in the presentation by JP. And as Anthony said, I don't want to steal his thunder later on either. So the next slide zooms in a bit on the northern side, northern part of the site. Here you see the Whittemore connections to the Central Plaza, as well as the linear path connection on the right side of the plan. So bike and pedestrian lanes, these are all public accessible connections to and through the site. You'll also note at the top part of the plan, the Whittemore parking lots are to remain and will be enhanced with trees and other improvements that were recommended by the neighbors, and more on this a little bit later in the presentation. So the next slide shows the network of connections and paths through the site. This was one of the main design principles for the project, expanding bike and pedestrian paths. And we heard that from the community early on to create more space for bikes and pedestrians. And that was critical to the success of the project. And as you can see from this diagram, extensive bike and pedestrian paths have been added to expand the bike and pedestrian accommodations. Community input was vital to provide the most useful and the safest connections through the site. So through the Alewife study group process, specifically with Mike Nakagawa's collaboration, it was integral in helping define a west to east path through the site that connects folks with the bike accommodations to the west and the Minuteman path through the site and then to points east. And this will help alleviate the current congestion that's happening east of the path for those folks who are really, bike commuting through the site and toward points east. And then to the south, you can see a robust network of paths in the Jerry's Pond area. And again, there'll be more detail on that in later parts of the presentation. So on the next slide, we'll zoom in a bit on the northern part of the site, and I'll draw your attention to a couple of things. One is the purple line that I was just mentioning on the left side. So that does connect down south through the site to points east. And again, that will alleviate congestion that we've heard from the community that exists east of the head house by creating this alternate path for through bikes traveling in west to east direction. Also just highlight the Whittemore connections, both pedestrian and the multimodal path. In addition, wanted to note that on the west side of the site, you can see dash line that is through the tunnel underneath Route 16. So we did hear from the community that they were interested in that as potential connectivity. We did do some analysis of that, and based on some dimensional challenges, unable to provide sort of two-way dedicated bike and pedestrian, as well as the required dimensions for emergency vehicles such as fire truck. But we do know that, you know, eastbound legal bike circulation will occur there, and then it can connect through into the network of paths created on the site. And all right, next slide. So in addition to creating connections, the project is also creating destinations. So based on that community feedback and great ideas from folks like David Bass and others, the Central Plaza was designed to accommodate food trucks, lots of seating, a temporary performance area, as well as retail. And all of these areas will be publicly accessible. To the south, there are overlooks and seating within the habitat areas and Jerry's Pond, and there'll be more on that from the landscape architect. So next, we'll do a bit of a walking tour through the site, just show you a few views of the new buildings and views from around the neighborhood. So this first one is what we call the Whittemore Gateway. So this is looking south from Whittemore. This is the permeability. This is the connection through the site. You'll notice that with the building setbacks, there's space for trees and for landscape buffer between the neighborhood and buildings. And the next slide is closer to sort of the Harrison Avenue area. And again, you can see the setback allows for landscape buffer between the buildings. We've scaled the buildings. They are 3-story under the current zoning, as Anthony mentioned, and scaled appropriately, as well as created massing moves to break down the overall building length. In the next view, you'll see the Central Plaza. You'll see the activity with the food trucks, and in addition, the sort of scale of the buildings as they step down to 3- and 2-story. In the next slide, this is the shared roadway within the site. So this is shared between service vehicles and cyclists. This is not normal vehicular traffic. This will only be service vehicles on the site or emergencies. So mostly used by cyclists, and then pedestrian sidewalks on the side. You can see the overlooks on the right side that overlook into the natural habitat area. And then in the distance is Harvey Street, just to orient everyone. And then you can sort of see the scale of the residential buildings in the background. And then in the next slide, you'll see the corner retail. So that's right at the corner of the building in the center. And that is the publicly open and accessible retail as an amenity through the site. And it also, just to, as you cut through the site to go to the MBTA head house, you can grab a coffee on your commute onto the T. This also shows the shared roadway as well. And then the last slide is really just a summary. So, based on the valuable community process and input, the proposed project will provide more energy efficient buildings, a reduction in the overall heat island effect, lower sound levels, meaningful neighborhood connections, and more space for bikes and pedestrians. So thank you all for your attention tonight. And next, I'll pass it over to Chrissy Gabriel from IQHQ. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So we can go to the next slide, Joanne. Thank you. So what you're seeing here is a sketch that is specific to the lots north of Whittemore, and then also what we call our east surface lot. Initially, as Anthony had mentioned, we did not have any scope included on those surface lots. The intention was always to maintain them as accessory parking, but we didn't have any specific scope there. It was through discussions with the neighborhood, specifically Nahit, who was very helpful with giving us the perspective of understanding some of the pain points from the neighbors to the north and within that Whittemore area in regards to stormwater management and how that negatively impacts their house. And then also with a request for putting more trees there. And so what we're doing in response to that is putting those stormwater detention tanks that you're seeing there, those grid lines, to help with the stormwater. And then we're also, sorry, and just to be clear, we are meeting the city's requirements of the 25:2. We're also adding additional 4,000 square feet of pervious space to, again, assist with the stormwater management. And also planting approximately 30 trees in the Whittemore lots over there. So that's going to help with heat island effect and then also help soften up that area of the neighborhood as it's primarily just surface lots now. I also do want to call attention to some of the commitments that we've made to the community in regards to use of parking. So we have committed to the neighborhood use of these surface parking lots, as well as the 20 EV stations that are in that east parking lot from the hours weekdays 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning, and also Friday 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. Monday morning. We have also happily agreed to provide access to the garage in the event of a snow emergency. And we just want to make it clear that those commitments are legally bound to the project and the development, and the language is found in the Article 19 application as well. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Sean Manning at VHB to talk about some transportation specifics.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Chrissy, and good evening, everybody. Just a few slides to share with you. We can go to the next slide, please. I just wanted to walk through just at a high level what we're trying to accomplish from a transportation standpoint. And you certainly heard a lot of details just now from Chrissy Gabriel and also Chris Haynes, talking about a lot of the terrific things we want to do on site to really promote sustainable transportation. And certainly this site, in its unique ability because of where it's located, to interconnect neighborhoods, interconnect them to key regional walking and biking paths, to the T, the playing fields and open space, is awesome. And we're really, leveraging that as best we can. And I would say, that was always our intent early on. And certainly through conversations with folks, on the line tonight, as well as some really, engaging back and forth with ASG over the past year, has helped the project just evolve and become better and better. EV, again, just to elaborate on the points Chrissy just made, to incorporate EV at a level that the city wants to incorporate, which is 25% chargers up front and the ability to have charging stations at all parking spaces in the future. But not only to do that, but to do it in a manner where we do have some out where the community can make use of them and not have them in the parking garage. And that's obviously a very important provision. Chris Haynes talked about access and circulation. When we get into the site plan, we'll talk about that a little bit more, but certainly understanding that there are local residential communities that surround us. And while those are terrific opportunities to get people to the T and all these walking and biking opportunities, we don't want them to be unintended vehicle and cut through opportunities. And we've designed the site to really do that. And then, of course, parking. This project results in a loss of parking. And we can transition to the next slide as I talk about that detail, because there's a little table here. So there are 722 spaces on site today, and we're actually reducing that count down to 653. And we're doing that through a bunch of means. Chrissy just walked through what we want to do, north of Whittemore in terms of stormwater management and heat island, and frankly, just have those lots look a lot better than they do today. It's all pavement, but also recognize that the community makes use of those parking spaces on weekends during snow emergencies. And what we heard is that it's very important to maintain those. But at the end of the day, we are reducing the parking count, and we're doing that because we're really going to encourage people to get here by other means, the T, biking and walking, and we're going to incentivize that. And we can go to the next slide, please. So here is a site plan, and Chris did a great job talking about a lot of the walking and biking paths. I just wanted to talk about vehicular access a little bit, starting with the parking garage. So the notion that a lot of parking would be consolidated south of the site is certainly important for a lot of reasons, but probably most importantly, because it provides the opportunity for us to have most of our traffic enter and exit the site via the Alewife Station access road and get directly to Route 2. So Route 2, of course, not just an important connection to go west, but also north and south, given its connection to 128, just a few miles down the road. And something north of 50% of our traffic is going to do that and never be on the Alewife Brook Parkway or on local roads. Internal to the site, we're going to have gates in all kinds of different places. And the whole point of those gates is to eliminate unintended cut-through traffic, whether that's Route 2 traffic that wants to get to Whittemore and then over to Mass Ave or other routes. We have strategically put in these prox cards to eliminate that. So certainly on the west driveway, which connects over to the west side of Whittemore, that would be a prox card access. The right-hand side, which is noted in blue on the site plan, as Chris had just mentioned a couple of slides ago, that is really service vehicle access only, and it would be gated at Whittemore. So really no vehicular access from Whittemore, except in the case of public safety or emergency, they would certainly have access. And that the same goes for Harvey, just to reiterate that. I know that was mentioned before. And then finally, you see the little police symbol at the intersection of Whittemore and Alewife Brook Parkway. That is a measure that Grace had in place for many years, and we've heard that that's important, and we're going to reinstitute that in the afternoons to have a police detail to do a couple of things. First and foremost, to help traffic get out onto the Alewife Brook Parkway, which we know in the afternoon can be a challenging corridor to drive on, but also to get people to respect the cut-through restriction in the afternoon. That is signed, and I know the Cambridge police do come out on occasion and enforce that, but having that police detail there pretty much every weekday is going to help to really alleviate people that don't respect that particular restriction. We can go to the next slide, please. So I also wanted to just give you a little flavor of traffic operations analysis. So this is the morning peak hour, and I would focus on the delay changes mostly, which you will see in the morning are relatively small across the board. And again, that's because a significant percentage of traffic based upon journey to work and where folks are coming, living and working, are going to make use of Route 2. Of course, they're going to make use of other streets as well, but that strategy seems to be very effective in terms of the impact that we have on surrounding streets and intersections. And we can go to the next slide, please. That is the same in the afternoon, although I will highlight Alewife Brook Parkway and Mass Ave, which does not operate terribly well in the afternoon. We're not anticipating a lot of cars going through that intersection, but even a few cars can impact delay to a certain degree. So I want to make note of that so people understand that. We're also aware that the MBTA and the city have put bus lanes in on Mass Ave. That was done after we did this traffic study. We know it's a sensitive issue, and that's something that we want to talk to TP&T about a little bit moving forward and just sort of understand the impact of that and what makes the most sense long term. And next slide. So in terms of process, we have conducted a traffic study for the city. There's been a lot of back and forth with the traffic and parking department on that. This project, because it abuts the Alewife Station access road, which is a state road, we need an access permit and we have to go through MEPA for that. So a very similar traffic study submitted to MEPA recently. And we continue to work very closely with both entities, the city and the state, to understand what our complete mitigation package is going to be. As an example, the city and the community has brought up Como Field and the issue of bus turning movements, and certainly with our work with Jerry's Pond, that is on the table of something that we're committed to doing, and there'll be much more before it's all said and done. Those conversations are ongoing. Certainly as it relates to TDM, we can go to the next slide. Very, very committed to transportation demand management incentives to get people out of cars. And just to walk through, some of those measures in particular, and again, I would reiterate what you've heard many times. A lot of this has been through not just city feedback and input, but community impact and feedback. And certainly our ASG meetings have been incredibly beneficial to helping us sort of evolve and grow what our project is going to be from a transportation standpoint and lots of other perspectives. But certainly having a transportation coordinator who's going to be the clearinghouse for all tenants on site, very generous transit subsidies for employees, and that, that's certainly a huge provision and something that happens all the time in Cambridge and will happen here. We're going to be a very active player in the LYFTMA and understand how we can continue to evolve and understand and exploit ways to get people out of their cars and use alternative forms of transportation. And certainly as it relates to walking and biking, having that infrastructure in place. So having not just great bike path connectivity, but places to park, places to shower and have lockers so that, people will use that as a mode that's viable to get to work. And then finally, just reiterating reduction in parking spaces, roughly 10%, roughly 70 or so spaces being reduced in connection with the project. So thank you. I look forward to your questions. I'm turning it over to my colleague, Howard Mosier. Now he's going to walk through stormwater and flood storage strategies.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everyone. Good evening. My name is Howard Mosier. I'm with VHB. I'm going to talk about stormwater and flood storage and some of the benefits that will be resulting from the project. Next slide, please. I want to go quickly. Chris Haynes did an excellent job of talking about the project's building siting strategy and the goal to locate the building components and any necessary access roads and pedestrian circulations over existing pavements and building areas to the extent possible. This is just the image of the existing site plan. Next slide, please. Again, Chris and others talked about putting the buildings over the pavements, and you can see the new buildings, that the new construction buildings 3, 4, and 5, they're in light blue. They're located pretty much over existing pavements, existing roof areas. These are all contributing towards some impacts to the existing environment. Buildings 1 and 2 will remain, and the garage is located mostly over an existing surface parking lot. This creates the opportunity to allow for the project to protect and provide a very large contiguous habitat. You can see it in a large green area shown to the right and south of the garage between Russell Field, the linear path, the proposed garage, and the MBTA head house. And you also see there's a woodland preserve to the left of the garage. There was also another preserve just south of that. It just didn't get highlighted in green. This siting strategy allowed for the preservation of over 325 trees within the red boundary. That's in addition to over 450 estimated trees on IQHQ property south of this red boundary, pretty much south of the MBTA head house. Next slide, please. I want to speak for a couple moments about the existing 100-year floodplain. And the existing 100-year floodplain is located at elevation 1876 on Cambridge's city datum. And this figure represents the limits of an existing projected 100-year flood event. The different colors represent the different elevations. The low spot elevation is approximately 14, and it goes up to 1876. But in general, the Federal Emergency Management Association would expect that the flood limits would be wherever they're shown color boundaries. And what we have to do with our proposed project, next slide, please, is we have some impacts. We're locating buildings partially within that existing floodplain, some roadway improvements, the proposed parking garage. The project's required to mitigate any impact in the existing floodplain. And this is a volumetric exercise. The project will have to provide replacement volume at a 1-to-1 ratio or better. And as depicted in this plan, our project team's been working hard to create that benefit, and we are increasing the floodplain capacity. It's important to note that when we last met as a collective group at a community meeting, this looked a little bit different. And there's been a number of major and minor moves in coordination with the community groups, Mackie Buck, Mike Nakagawa, David Bass, Eric Runenbaum, Louis Weitzman, a lot of great questions, a lot of great suggestions. For example, it won't reflect well on a plan of this scale. This is a very large site for Cambridge, but the garage has been shifted to the west. That provided a benefit. We've allowed the portions underneath the garage to flood, again, creating benefit. All said and done, when we get done with this project, as proposed herein, if you go to the next slide, please. Oh, go back one, sorry. I was going to say, as shown here, the project's providing approximately just a little bit under 3% additional floodplain capacity than exists under current conditions. So after the project is constructed, the project site will take the ability to hold more floodwaters, thus reducing the impact to the neighborhood. So that's a good thing. Next slide, please. As I believe Anthony mentioned, the project team is now considering looking at an area to the southwest of Jerry's Pond. This image that you see here, again, it's a very large site, but this stretches from Whittemore Avenue at the top all the way down to Ringe Avenue. And the area around Jerry's Pond would also flood under the existing 100-year floodplain conditions. And it's being studied to take advantage of that white area at the lower left of the corner of the, there you go. That was an old building. There's some pavements there. And the project team's exploring creating the compensatory storage there, which would have two benefits. One is it would remove paved areas. And it's not existing great pavements, but there's pavements there that prevent rainwater from entering into the soil. So those pavements would able to be removed. And then the floodplain compensatory area would be created there, which would allow the project team to have reduced impacts to trees within the development area. So this is still very much under study. That study and the initial findings will be presented to the Conservation Commission for their review and consideration. Next slide, please. So this is just a summary, as I mentioned before, in terms of flood storage. Under current conditions, under current design, the project would create almost 3% more volume than exists today. So that's a benefit for the entire neighborhood. Next slide, please. So I want to move quickly to some stormwater rate reductions. So the flooding, it doesn't necessarily have to be associated with any rain events, but it often is. But stormwater is associated with rain events. And the project has a number of benefits that are going to contribute to very substantial stormwater rate reductions. The siting strategy itself reduced impacts, but then the project's adding over an acre of permeable area. It's over 50,000 square feet. The new buildings will be provided with either green roofs, you can see them in green as shown here, or purple roofs. Purple roofs take the advantages of a green roof, but also supplement it with detention capacity. It means when rain hits those roofs, it doesn't immediately get into the pipes and take up capacity in the storm drain system in the neighborhood, freeing up capacity for the neighborhood systems. We, as Chrissy mentioned and others mentioned, we are retrofitting detention systems that are below the pavement surface in the lots north of Whittemore. We're also providing water quality benefits when we do those detention systems. And south of Whittemore Avenue, sprinkled throughout the development area, the project will be including significant amounts of subsurface detention systems. Again, if you're walking on the surface, you won't see them, but below the surface, there'll be a lot of volume for stormwater to be held within the site. Again, not releasing at the same time as the stormwaters want to make their way through all the pipes that are located below the streets and into the wetlands to the west of the site. We're also proposing stormwater harvesting so that rainwaters will be collected in a tank and stored so they can be used for irrigation demands on the rooftop plantings or in the site plantings. And the project will have to engage within a robust operations and maintenance plan. This will ensure that whatever devices and management techniques are installed, they'll be maintained and monitored to ensure that they function as well 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road as they do today. Next slide, please. So this is a very unique site. It's a very large site for Cambridge standards, but in general, stormwater from the IQHQ development area goes to 5 different design points, and they go north, they go to the west in general. They include contributions from Russell Field. Of importance here is we had to analyze for each of the design points, what are we doing to reduce stormwater? And I'm just going to point attention to the 25-year column. In a 25-year storm, we had to analyze runoff. This is the rate of the stormwater running off the site and into pipes under these different scenarios. And in brackets, you see the reductions. And when you add up all the reductions, that's approximately 50 CFS. cubic feet per second. That's not a volume that most people know, but just in terms of equivalence, 50 CFS is equivalent to over 30 million gallons a day. It's approximately equal to about 2,200 domestic garden hoses discharging simultaneously. It's a tremendous amount of water. And what it means for the neighborhood and the receiving waters is all that closed pipe drainage that has experienced surcharging in these storm events right now, that capacity will not be taken up by this project site any longer. It'll be free for the other neighborhoods. So a tremendous amount of benefit there. So next slide. At this point, I'd like to turn over Jennifer Sweet from Haley and Aldrich.
Thanks, Howard. Hi, I'm Jen Sweet with Haley and Aldrich. I've been involved in this site for a very long time in its current state, and really never thought I'd see the day where the site would be improved in such a dramatic way. I mean, we're talking about Food Truck Fridays and seeing David Bass perform a Space Odyssey. I think it's a space opera. And I feel like I might have to go do my AUL inspections every Friday now. But as an LSP, I couldn't be happier that IQHQ is leading this project, because they have really made it a priority to focus on environmental responsibility and community engagement. And that makes my job a whole lot easier. Next slide. So some of the questions that we've heard from the community through this process is, what about the contamination, and have you tested? And this site has gotten a lot of attention given its history of industrial use that date back to the early 1900s, when Dewey and Almy Chemical Company operated at the site. As you can see on the image on this slide, there's been extensive chemical testing in the past with over 600 explorations. And the presence of contamination that's consistent with the former use here is not unusual for for sites with former industrial uses like this. Some remediation in the past that was conducted included removal of former process waste areas. And that, along with implementation of an activity and use limitation, have resulted in a condition of no significant risk for both human health and the environment. What the AUL does is it prevents exposure to contamination through the use of protective covers. AULs and protective covers are commonly used at urban sites as an effective way to prevent exposure to contamination without having to dig up the whole site. Also, during initial community outreach for the project, we were asked, is there contamination in Jerry's Pond from the former Grace site? So we recently retested, and the results indicate no. There is no significant risk to either people or wildlife in Jerry's Pond from constituents associated with the former Grace site. So that's great news. Next slide. Another question we've heard is, how is this project going to be constructed safely given the contamination? Going back to the previous testing at the site, there were concerns about asbestos in soil. And the Owl Life Study Group formed in 1995, around that time, I believe. And through much of their efforts, the city created and adopted an asbestos protection ordinance. The ordinance ensures protective measures are in place for soil disturbing work at sites that contain asbestos. IQHQ has committed to working within this ordinance, including the use of tents when working with soil that contains asbestos. As I previously mentioned, protective covers are an effective way of preventing exposure to contaminants. And the underlying soil that contains asbestos does not pose risk when it's left alone. That's why one of the overarching goals of the project has been to minimize soil disruption to the extent possible. But, let's be realistic. There's going to be a need to disturb soil in order to redevelop the site. And frankly, the result of that will be a much better environmental condition at the end of the project. But what will be done to manage contaminated soil that does require disturbance? There will be multiple protective measures in place as prescribed in several work plans that are being developed. Those work plans also get reviewed and approved by local and state regulatory agencies. Then during construction, first, there will be engineering controls such as wetting of dust and covering of stockpiles that prevent contaminants from becoming airborne. These are measures that have been proven to work on other sites where soil has been disturbed that contains asbestos. What's unique about this site, however, is that as the added layer of protection through the use of tenting per the ordinance. So that is above and beyond what is typically done on other contaminated sites. And that will provide an extra assurance that the soil can be excavated and handled safely. Also during construction, there will be on-site monitoring conducted by Haley and Aldridge and by certified asbestos monitors that ensure that the contractors that are doing the work are complying with those protective work plans, as well as air monitoring that will be conducted when contaminated soil is being handled that will verify that these engineering controls are working properly. That data will be made available to the public on a regular basis. Next slide. We've also been asked by the community if the site is going to be safer at the completion of the project. And yes, in addition to the community benefits that Chris and Howard have mentioned and the stormwater management improvements that you heard about, some of the other environmental improvements that will exist from this project are, new and improved protective covers that will be installed where soil is excavated. The combination of the existing protective cover and these new covers will prevent exposure to remaining contamination at the site. Also, clean utility corridors will be constructed. And the benefit of this is that it eliminates the need to disturb soil in the future when utility repairs or maintenance are required. An AUL will remain that prevents exposure while providing the added benefits that have been talked about, such as multi-use paths through the site and nature overlooks like seen in this image on the left. The use of new soil for the improved protective covers will also improve the subgrade conditions for plantings and trees, and that will result in a healthier ecosystem. The natural habitats will be enhanced through all the thoughtful planning that JP and his team have been doing. You'll hear him talk about the addition of native trees and plants that provide habitat and food value for wildlife and that build healthier ecosystems. And you'll see that all the carefully planned overlooks and boardwalks that will provide opportunities for community viewing as well. And so I hope that we haven't lost many of you because JP is up next, and I think you're really going to enjoy his part of the talk. He gets all the exciting stuff. I get all the boring contamination stuff, and JP gets to go on about all the improvements. So stay tuned.
Oh boy. Thanks, Jen. Set me up there. Hi, I'm JP Shadley. I'm a landscape architect. I'm really lucky because I get to tell you all about a ton of cool stuff that we're going to do here. And thanks for sticking with us. This is a very complicated, big site with all kinds of really critical things to teach us ourselves and each other and you guys to talk about. And so it takes a long time to talk about it. So help me muddle through, please. Can we go to the first slide? One of the first things I want to say is, as I talk about the natural environment and the public open space, it's a real balancing act that we're going to have to achieve here to get it right. There's this place has a long history of industrial uses, and so we're not destroying a pristine natural space. We're building on some good things that have happened and improving some things that weren't as good. But these two photos show how it's evolved in the first 30 years after it was left alone, from 71 to 2002. And I think more than anything, the image is a testament to the wisdom of the Alewife Study Group and how decades ago, and it's kind of ironic, but they protected the landscape and people both at the same time by fencing a lot of the area off. And now, because people haven't been allowed to trample it and compact it and use it so much, it's actually recovered quite a bit. The landscape is coming back, and we're hoping to help it only get better and to make even a better ecosystem out of it. So can we go to the next slide, please? This is a big site. Working on a balance here. It's incredible. I feel really lucky. there's such a dedicated community. I mean, working with Joel Nogic and Lisa Burke and Eric Grunebaum, and partnering with ASG and Friends of Jerry's Pond, as well as Mass Audubon and Green Cambridge. I mean, they have improved the project so much, it's incredible. But I mean, to help you give it a sense of scale, if you start up at the top of our project and you walk to the south, you go right through the heart of our pedestrian crossroads and walk around the garage and down past the MBTA head house, and then walk a loop around Jerry's Pond, and then say you head back home and go right back the same way you came, you will have walked a mile, a little over a mile. It's a big site. So it's really, interesting that this incredible transformation is going to take place in such a large area. There's this legacy of natural public open space. And so there's going to be real environmental and social consequence that happens here. So I'm going to keep reading my notes because I don't want to miss too much. So there's 3 areas that I'll focus on, and each are very different. Again, it's a big place. So there's the central kind of walking plaza that runs between our 5 buildings. That's 1,000 feet long, that spine that goes between there. And so we're doing a lot of cool things there. And then there's the sort of area south of the garage and north of the head house that's kind of got a panhandle shape to it. And that's just over 4 acres of natural area that we're going to supplement the existing condition and really improve upon its ecology. And then the 3rd area that I'm going to focus on is Jerry's Pond. And we're going to talk about all the things that, well, some of the things, a lot of things that we're trying to do around there, and with your help, we'll be able to do. So can we go to the first slide? The next slide, I mean. So this is a blow up of the crossroads, north to south and east to west, at the center of our pedestrian street. And the 5 white rectangles you see are all food trucks. So we pulled a vote today, and we decided we're going to change the name of this to David Bass Way. It's kind of a really cool long street that he's contributed so much to, all of the different programming things that we're going to do on this. First of all, there's over 150 really cool benches. The pavement is really interesting. The planting's really nice. There's a place to get food, coffee. There's lots and lots of seating. There's the food trucks. And through all of our furniture choices and the surfaces that we're using, all the materials will be fully accessible. So if a person happens to have a handicap, they're still going to be able to easily get through the entire site. So can we go to the next slide, which is to the west? This is a continuation of the image we were just looking at, and it shows how there's still more. There's additional food trucks, and there's an outdoor temporary stage area with seating. There's a synthetic turf area, which contributes to water recharge and also makes it so that you can sit there on the grass and it'll be comfortable all the time. Let's do the next slide. I'm going to keep going really fast. Sorry about that, folks, but there's so much to cover. And so it's really a beautiful landscape as well. There's porous pavers everywhere, as Howard said. There's state-of-the-art treeway details. There's really good lighting. Overall, it's just a quality landscape experience, a plaza that will add to the public realm in the area that people will be free to come and participate in. Okay, can we go to the second area that I'm going to talk about, which is the 4-acre wildlife habitat? And again, if I'm not given enough detail, this is our 3rd presentation, and we've covered a lot of these things in greater detail, but I'm going to try to cover things real well. So this area is, I guess one of the most important things we're doing is leaving a lot of it alone. Howard refers to, how much flood storage we're doing on the site, and it's really an incredible accomplishment to reduce the flooding that'll happen in the neighborhood. But at first, before we worked as hard as we have with the community, and I will tell you, Mike Nakagawa has beat the heck out of me on several occasions. It was really a struggle. And to be able to do that flood storage and create this open space without taking out as many trees. And through our efforts, we've reduced the number of trees since our first effort by over 80 trees that we're not impacting. And so we're going to create large new areas of pollinator meadow so that we can really help the habitat. We're going to create significant areas of native new forest. And those are all labeled here. And we're going to add a tree nursery on top of the garage, which the sustainable area will talk about that a little bit more. There's also, for people to enjoy and learn from what we're doing here, which is really, a reclamation project. There are 3 overlooks. And again, we started with 2 overlooks, and the community convinced us no, a 3rd one would be a good thing, and that's the one in the lower left where Jen was showing you the picture before. But as soon as you get past the T station, feeling like you've arrived at something that's really, natural and modern and interesting is where we're going. So as you go around this open space, you're going to have these beautiful viewpoints out into the landscape, and they're going to be accentuated by a wide variety of plant material and supplemented with educational information, interpretive information that explains what we did here and what it means to the ecology and the habitat. So can I go to the next slide, please? Oops, can we just back for 1 second? Sorry. If you take that cursor and just move about an inch or 2 to the right, to the just straight right. Yeah, right about there. The next shot is a photo from there of the existing condition. Can you take that to the next slide now? And so if you're standing looking at the existing condition, that area that we're looking at doing this 4-acre natural area is comprised of about 75% of only 2 species of trees, and that's black locust and cottonwood. And while they both really help with mitigation for the heat sink, the cottonwood are not really that great from the point of view of habitat. I mean, they have some foraging and value, but black locusts are really good trees in terms of what they do for pollinators and butterflies but on the other hand, a forest with that kind of concentration of makeup is really vulnerable to diseases. And most of us have heard about like chestnut blight and Dutch elm disease, and more recently, emerald ash borer. And these are things that just decimate a forest. So it's possible that if something like that happened and we didn't help to expand the range of the species in this area, we could lose half of this forest in just a year or 2. That's how dynamic some of these pests are. So can we go to the next slide, please? So if we get that wide variety of proposed new trees, it'll enhance the wildlife value a great amount. Things like beeches and oaks and cherries, cedars, white pine, they all feed a really wide variety of animals and plants, birds, of course. This is an avian way, but byway. But they also reduce the forest vulnerability to disease. So and there's also the side of it that's just for people. And we're going to do maples and linden. Everything's native, but everybody loves birch trees, and they give 4-season beauty. And so we're going to include, some of them. But one of the most fun things I think about the project from the point of view of just pure tree selection is that Amelanchier is a great native flowering tree, and it's commonly called shad bush. And, alewife are also called shad. And which is kind of cool because, shad bush, alewife, shad bush, they flower when the shad are running. So that's kind of a really cool association, I think. So can we go on to the next slide, please? So one of the other things we were asked to talk about was, the speed that plants grow at. And that first slide that I showed you, I'm sorry, not to be bad, but it took 30 years for us to get trees about the size of the one in the middle that you see here. And if we are allowed to do what we want to do, we're going to prepare the subgrade so that the trees get a better start with friable soil that they can put their roots down into rather than compacted you know, basically it's like pavement. You know, trees take a long time to get started with such terrible conditions. And so we're also, instead of growing in urban fill, we're growing in topsoil. And then on top of that, the city requires us to monitor the health of the trees. And so if things die on a regular basis, more than annually, we have to weigh in and report in on what's died and how we're going to replace them. So it's in our best interest to give them a really good start. So on the left side of this slide, you see the person for scale, and you see the 3 little twigs. So we're going to be working with a mix of small and large plant material so that we can get lots of variety in our species. And that way, you use the larger plants where people really need a little shade right away. You use the smaller plants where you want them to compete with each other and see which guys will do best in that environment. But the main important thing about this slide is how fast the trees will grow compared to how fast they used to grow. So you can see that, you know, in 20 years, we're expecting our trees to average 30 feet tall, which will be terrific. So that's an average. You know, some of them will go faster, some of them will be a little smaller, but this is what a red maple will look like. We go to the next slide. You know, river birches, similar kind of habit. Next slide. And then a couple more oaks on the top, and then American linden on the bottom, which grow really fast. And so that just gives you a general overview of how our approach to the planting and the sequencing of it will really help. Next. Okay, so now, you know, we're at 7:52 and I want to keep flying. So hopefully you guys are following it and I'm not overlooking too many things, but we're going to talk about Jerry's Pond, which, you know, a lot of people are really most interested in Jerry's Pond. You know, it's incredible what the help we've got, you know, Rachel DeLucas and Lou Weitzman and Eric Grunebaum and Anusha, you know, young people have been really interested to this and really made contributions to the project. So I'm going to spend a lot of time and working from the upper left to in a circuit. I'm going to first show it to you in plan and then show it to you in a perspective. So that's the MBTA station. If we go around clockwise, the next thing you come to here is the communal gardens. Then we have a boardwalk and lots of access to it. We're protecting that part of the forest. Someone's been asking lately about fencing. Yes, we have to protect that part of the forest for habitat, but we've got beautiful boardwalks with railings that you're all familiar with that are 42 inches tall, that are highly transparent, but keep people off of that area. And then adjacent to the bike path, there will remain, but be upgraded, the existing fence. So you can see in there, we're going to clear away a lot of the invasives, but you're not going to be able to just traipse across there and disrupt the sensitive understory, nor disrupt the cover, which is really important for health, safety, and welfare. Then as you come south, that darkened colored dot that you see there, that's the Eco Center. And then the next large paved area that you see, it's not really paved, it's boardwalk, is what we're calling Jerry's Deck. As you come down to Ringe Ave, we've got a couple of overlooks and a boardwalk that's farther away from Ringe Avenue. And all the way down to the corner, we've got better on the southwest corner, we've got 9 really beautiful oak trees that we're working hard to preserve that are there. And so we're moving a multi-use path, as you see that widened sort of gray area on the southwest corner in. So it brings people into that area and then all the way back up. And I'm going to show you another image that talks about a lot of this in a more 3D bird's eye view. Next, please. Okay, so what this image really does is it shows how the project area is broken into 2 major parts, you know, well, or 3 if you count the roads. I mean, somebody caught us. We had a draft image that didn't show the traffic and we got burned for it. But I spent about 2 hours adding those cars the day before yesterday on this picture, which is a lot more realistic. And, you know, we've got the wires in and the overhead lines and all that. And I mean, we're trying to be as realistic as we can here. But what's very important is that there was a heron rookery, and hopefully it'll be back. There's a very large area here on the left side of the entire image that's forest that we do not want to disturb. I mean, there's a possibility that we're going to find, as Howard was saying, that where the label that says community outdoor overlook, right in that foreground, we may find that it's better for the overall project for all of the reasons for the environment to, put more flood storage there, to do some wetlands, to work hard to reduce the number of trees we'll have to take down by doing those wetlands and the flood storage in that area. But we do want to protect that heron rookery. We don't want to bring people to that area. So as we go from the lower left corner, where we've got this new multi-use bicycle and pedestrian trail that gets you away from that, loud intersection, and then you head north up the left side of the site, we've threaded this sort of circuitous, purposeful, slow pedestrian path through the trees. And that's so that you can separate. Right now, the bicycle path that's just to the left of that, which we would repave, it's pretty tight. And so we don't want to take and have too much impact on the wildlife. We don't want to cut down too many trees, but we do want to create a separation of people and bicycles in that area. And then as we go up, what I want to explain is that the next way I'm going to show you a lot of things is that I'm going to show you first the T Plaza, which we all recognize the red graphic there that helps us. Then we're going to go to the right of that with the communal gardens, and I work with Green Cambridge. Then we're going to go further to the right clockwise again and look at the Eco Center that we're working with Mass Audubon, and that will have community events in it. Then Jerry's Deck. Then we'll come back past the parking area on the Long Range Avenue again and close it out. So I'm going to keep trying to talk fast. Next slide, please. So the improvements that we're going to do to the MBTA Plaza and to the communal gardens are at the north top part of the site. And you can see how they're connected quite a bit, and we're improving the access along that bicycle and pedestrian way by making, you can see in the middle between the two, we're making much more clear, clean, safe connections as a pedestrian crosses from that area where it gets very tight on the east corner of the T intersection. And then the communal gardens, go ahead. So next slide, please. So this aerial view shows how, there's a really comprehensive refurbishment of the bike paths, of the circulation. We're working to improve the safety and also make it a fun space. We've got these really cool planters that Matt thought up, and the community and has been working with us on to enliven what's really now an awful space. Take away the trailers, put a really cool mural on the side of it, so that when you come from our project development area, you feel like, wow, I'm coming to something cool. There's a community aspect to this. Next slide, please. And then the communal garden is one of my favorite things. And, we're working with Green Cambridge and their team to provide really great services for this. And I got to keep going fast, folks, so I can answer questions about how this all works. I went into great depth on that in the last time we talked about it, but they've got a great management strategy. They give away any extra food they have. It's really a terrific program. So let's go to the next. Two of one of my favorite pieces of the project are the Eco Center and Jerry's Deck, and they're located, you can just see to the north of the bus turnaround. So to the left of that in this image, and they're really consequential pieces of the project. So next. So the first image I'm showing you is from like a bird's eye view from above the pond, looking at the Eco Center. And we've been working with the folks at Audubon quite a bit on this, and they've been incredibly helpful. They're partnering with us. And this view shows how it reaches right out over the water. It's a classroom. We have folding tables and chairs for the classes. They're stored in the box that you see there, as are the audio visual equipment. There's a pull down screen. So it'll truly be an outdoor classroom where we're going to be able to do experiments there. And, Audubon is going to manage this program. Next slide, please. On the other side of it, this is the community has done a terrific job pressing us on getting multiple uses out of things. And Anusha, you know, God bless her, she pressed and pressed for these grilling stations. And so you're going to be able to sign up for a time when you can have a community event that's invited, and you know, you have to sign up for it and have permission, but the picnics can be held here, or classes, etc. That's another use that's very exciting about the space. Can we go to the next slide? The reason I want to show this is because I want to show how Jerry's Deck is so, it's separated from the Eco Center. And, you know, I almost forgot to mention that, you know, we started on that southwest corner, which I'll come back to. I'm going to explain this again, but we located the Eco Center here because it's quieter than on the corner of Alewife Brook and Ringe Avenue. It's going to be a lot better place to actually learn about nature and be immersed in nature. So, but it's proximate to, you can just see the bottom of the foundation on the right side of this image of where the old bathhouse used to be. And so if we go to the next slide, here's some historic pictures. That the old bathhouse is on the top right. And on the left, you can see where the ball field is. Yes, thanks very much. That's right. There's where the old foundation is in the air photo. And on the lower right, when we went out there, lo and behold, we found it. It's still there. It's pretty big. So if you look in that plan view, you can see where all that pavement used to be. And that's all the way from not just the waterfront there where that rectangle is, but all the way to the right. It's about 3 times as large as that rectangle. There's still a lot of asphalt underneath there. And so if we work really carefully, we're going to be able to save a significant number of trees. And we go to the next slide. So this is a view, believe it or not, from basically at the tot lot, at the entrance to the tot lot right now, looking across the linear path. And looking towards where the Eco Center is, but across Jerry's Deck. And so we have all these trees surveyed, and I've done a visual inventory of them. I mean, that tree on the right is realistic. It's a huge oak tree that we're going to save. And the other tree to the left in the middle, those 3 that are together, I put that boardwalk above and around them so that people could walk right by them, and we can tell the story of how we've saved those trees. And it's a large area. There's going to be picnic tables on it, and about 60 chairs, 60 bench seats are in this area. So, and as you go obviously to the left side of it, you can see it's right on the waterfront. And so this was Lou's favorite space, Lou Weitzman's favorite space, and he pressed us on this, and you know, damn it, it's really cool. So I really hope we get to build this. But the next slide. The next slide is just a close-up of the edge as you just moved from the last slide closer to the water, and it shows how some of the interpretive markers are there. And we really don't want to impede the sort of the direct contact with the water. I mean, right now, at least the first time I went there about 10 months ago, when you look directly across the water here, I saw 9 herring from that vantage point. And you know, we're really hopeful that that's going to happen again. So next, please. So back to the big picture, just so you can see how far we've come. And now we're going to loop around to the right and come past that entry plaza with an overlook. I'm going to blow this up for you on the next slide. Again, we're going to go down the 300-foot long waterfront pedestrian boardwalk. And then we're going to end on this community outdoor overlook with 24 bench seating. So let's blow this up, please. And so the strategy here was that we're adding a bike lane to a multi-use path. We're widening the sidewalk, and then we're going to create a planted area where we add 30 or so more trees to those existing, but then we push this boardwalk out so that you're away from the edge of Ringe Avenue. It's a nice, broad, 10-foot wide boardwalk that's got beautiful views out to an immediate contact, you know, to the pond. So let's do the next slide. So this is what it looks like. You're away from Ringe Ave. There's new trees and old trees on your right side, creating a buffer. There's the bicycles going on the far right side. And this is a pedestrian space where you can walk with your kid, take some time, maybe sit there and read a book. So it's 300 feet long. It's a pretty significant kind of improvement. Next. And so this is my last detailed slide, which shows, again, you're looking back, that's the Eco Center over the shoulder of the woman with the backpack in the middle. But it's another place where you can just rest and look at the beauty of the site. And then let's just go to the last slide. And so this is the overview. We were just looking at that community outdoor overlook. And there we are. Thanks for your patience, everybody. And Eric Ruoff is next on sustainability. Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, JP. That's some exciting stuff. Good evening, folks. My name's Eric Ruoff from the Green Engineer. I'm the Sustainable Design Consultant for the development. And I know we've already thrown a lot at you. Don't worry, you only gave me a couple minutes. We recognize that being efficient with time is important too. But I'm lucky on this project since the team identified sustainability as an important goal early in the project and recognizes that that's a shared priority of the community. Now, since sustainable design is intrinsically a collaborative effort, you've already heard from my colleagues about many of the exciting elements that are already included in the design, but I wanted to highlight a few others. We're really proud of the holistic approach to sustainable design taken by the team and how much positive change will result from what you see on the site today as shown here, which is a walled off site that contains a mishmash of inefficient buildings and lots of surface parking. So some of the primary goals for the team included a focus on energy efficiency, where new high performance buildings will replace inefficient ones, and these will be designed to exceed the aggressive energy code. And those buildings that remain will see an enhanced renovation where IQHQ went above and beyond to commit to more efficient rehabilitation to improve overall energy efficiency. And going beyond just operational carbon, what happens with the operation of the building, the team is focused on embodied carbon as well. And through strategies like strategic reuse of structures where possible, and conducting some assessments to evaluate the environmental impact of the products and materials used on site, and selecting those to reduce embodied carbon and other environmental impacts. Renewable energy is also a priority, and the development will include multiple PV installations to generate clean energy on site into the future. I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail coming up. To further prepare for the future, and as already discussed, EV charging stations will be installed and an aggressive stormwater management system is included. Now, water is not only a priority, what's happening outside and hitting the ground, but also inside the building. And the team is targeting a 30% reduction through the use of efficient plumbing fixtures throughout campus. These strategies and many others will be confirmed through third-party certification. So as we transition to this next slide, pay attention to the before and after. There we go. Gone are the inefficient buildings and the sea of blacktop, replaced by a sensitive design that revitalizes and reinvigorates the site, which is open to the neighborhood and provides significant open space, places for activity and respite, and addresses heat island impacts through a variety of strategies. We're proud of how this is all coming together and think it's going to result in dramatic improvement. So there's a lot going on though. So let's start up top. Next slide, please. An element we wanted to highlight is the team's commitment to green roofs in the design. And this was a priority even before the new green roof ordinance took effect. The design will include multiple green roof solutions. First, traditional extensive green roof areas will be included on the low roofs of the new construction buildings. But going beyond that, on the upper roof areas, biosolar is being proposed. This is a new to the US market approach that's a combination of green roofs and PV panels. The combination actually allows for more efficient operation of the PV panels given the lower ambient temperature provided by the green roof areas. So this biosolar and a more traditional PV canopy system as shown on the parking lot on the right will roughly offset the annual electricity production used in 50 average homes per year. Separately, if you let your eyes go south of the plan here, you'll see that structured garage in the tree nursery mentioned by others. The trees grown here are part of the city's backyard planting program, so they'll be planted throughout Cambridge, with hundreds of saplings produced throughout the year. Okay. So now that we talked about what's happening up top, let's head to the ground, right? This slide's also a good representation. You can stay on that first slide, of some of the strategies that will decrease heat island effect, right? In particular, you'll notice the light colored pavers in the central plaza and throughout the pedestrian oriented hardscapes. Additionally, but not shown here, is the team is working with the city to pilot light colored pavement surface treatments on the north lots, the existing north lots, to further reduce heat island impacts. These strategies will, in aggregate, help reduce stormwater, provide more natural habitat, while again, reducing heat island impact. Now, there's a lot of cool stuff going on that you can't see here too. And a lot of that Howard gave a great summary of the significant stormwater system. Beyond that, and he mentioned in passing, we are capturing water, and that will be treated and reused to irrigate all those beautiful plantings that JP just introduced you to. So this system will significantly reduce the potable water used on site for irrigations. And so, next slide, please. As a way to demonstrate the commitment to sustainable design, the project's pursuing third-party green building and health and wellness standards. Pursuing certification provides confirmation that we're walking the talk. I mean, I can tell you that I'm on a diet, but I can only prove it if I stand on a scale. So as proof of verification, all 5 buildings on campus are pursuing LEED Core and Shell version 4 certification. LEED is a well-established holistic green building system that focuses on site, water, energy, indoor environment, but has a primary focus on energy efficiency. One that's a shared priority for the team, the city of Cambridge, and frankly needed for our children and grandchildren. So all buildings are committed to achieving LEED Gold certification, one of the highest levels of certification. Beyond LEED, the new construction projects are pursuing the Fitwell Health and Wellness certification. This is a relatively new certification that focuses on promoting health and wellness within the design and operation of the building. So some of the strategies towards that are a lot of this enhanced site design elements there you've already heard about, but also include some of the bike infrastructure elements. It's really about activating the site and activating the people within that site. So there are some active design elements within the building as well, like promotion of stair use and providing exercise opportunities. All this is really to support employees. And so it will include other amenity areas like mother's rooms and frankly, access to water. And all this is really brought together by some health and wellness operation policies that are going to reduce the impact while promoting well-being. And so all new buildings on campus will be pursuing Fitwell certification, but really elements are found throughout campus. So I know I packed a lot in there pretty darn quickly, but I hope you'll see that we have a multifaceted approach and are making sustainable choices, not only for the end user, but the community as a whole. So I appreciate the opportunity to share a few of those things with you. So thank you for that. And Chrissy, back to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Eric. And just to chime in and add on to what Eric had just presented on and done a great job. So we're also, it's LEED Gold for all the buildings. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So 1 and 2, they are existing buildings. So we just want to ensure that we're being clear that we're bringing all those buildings, either new or existing, up to LEED Gold certification. So thanks, Eric. We can go to the next slide. So I just wanted to briefly talk about some preliminary and early construction work that we have slated for the February timeframe, 2022. We are committed to the transparent and the communication protocols that we have been bringing forth to the community and with the ASG groups as well. And so we are, as Anthony had mentioned, we're still deep in the permitting process, and he'll touch base on the next steps and timelines for those. But what we are looking at ahead of us is we're currently testing the existing buildings for any hazardous materials. And we are looking at starting abatement of those hazardous materials. We're unclear of what the reports are now as the testing is going on currently. But looking at doing the abatement for those, as well as some selective demo in buildings 1 and 2. We will be holding a meeting before work commences on site, so we can go over the specific logistics, traffic plan, construction management plan, and whatnot. And we just want to remind everybody that we do have the website here listed, IQHQcommunityprocess.com. So as construction commences, there will be regular updates posted there. We're also going to set up an email system so we could send out email updates as well to those folks who are interested in receiving it. And then we have our email available as well, which we posted here. Once we do have a confirmed on-site construction point of contact, we will share their information as well to make sure we keep the communication strong with the community. With that, I'll hand it back to Anthony.
Thanks, Chrissy. I do want to just also mention to Eric's presentation, buildings 1 and 2, although they're existing, and at least one of them probably we could have made a technical argument that we didn't have to bring it up to the gold LEED standard, where David was very affirmative in wanting to do that. We think it's right for the city and right for tenants. So both those buildings, although they're going to be refitted, will be LEED gold. So that's, and obviously because they're existing, we can start some work early on those, but we'll be back to the neighborhood before that happens, as Chrissy said. Next slide. We're almost done. This is our spin slide. So this is where we summarize all the good stuff and hope we leave you in a good place. But all kidding aside, this is sort of like, this was the standard that we drove home to everyone who you've heard from and that's worked on the site to make sure that the built condition leaves folks in a better place in every category, whether it's public access or parking count, stormwater, environmental condition, as JP does with so much passion, creating a better ecosystem, the Jerry's Pond access, pedestrian, improving both bike and pedestrian spaces. That was our goal. You know, there's no way to easily moderate the ped versus bike battle, nor would we try. What we tried to do was just increase capacity for all users, sustainable design, reducing noise, because they're new buildings, we can actually improve noise conditions. And obviously I talked about the community benefits. The next slide is kind of cool because Anusha went out, next slide, please. Anusha went out and did a survey in the towers and hit us with this like opening night. And a lot of it, to be honest, we thought was out of reach. And we've been plucking away at this. And when it's all said and done, all the things that folks wanted, whether it's, you know, seating areas, picnic areas, grilling areas, picnic tables. I think we started with like 30 seats at Jerry's and now we're up to like 110. We just kept moving closer and closer to the Friends of Jerry's Pond plan and also getting new input from the community. The only 2 items that I think we haven't been able to get to are the winter skating on the pond. Joel and I are still working on that, whether we can figure that out. I've always wanted that on the Cambridge Common. If I run for office again, I'm getting that done. And actually the last one we're kind of getting to anyway, because, you know, we are going to be able to have access during the different seasons. And I think we could probably connect some retail capacity if there's needs for certain things, but I don't want to put Food Town out of business either. Jim Williamson tells me that it's a vital asset to the neighborhood, so I'm not going to compete with them. But it's just nice that like the work that the young folks did and the work in Ringe Towers and the developments they went out and surveyed, that we were able to sort of get to all of these important things. And Obviously, we want it to be a special place for families. And on the Jerry's Pond note, we've sort of got to a place where we have a generic plan, and we're going to make the financial commitments necessary to deliver. But obviously, that will have to go through the Conservation Commission process, and things like lighting and, you know, how tall a fence is and where the fence goes. All that stuff is going to be debated and talked about at conservation. So it's certainly not a done deal. What we wanted to make sure of is coming forth with a plan that we thought met the sort of consensus areas, and to make a financial commitment to it. And I know we believe it improves the site. We consider it to be integral. Lou has continued to stress like it's all one, and we agree with that. So with that, I think we've answered some questions on chat. Sean, I want you to clear up the parking question, because I think we may have brought some confusion to that. But I guess by way of raised hands, we can answer questions. And, you know, we ran really late, so we'll do some Q&A and see where it takes us. And I might need some help with I'm not sure if I can see hand raising. It may just be the hosts. And why don't we start, Sean? There was a question about whether we would charge tenants for parking, which, you know, I assume tenants get charged somehow. But my experience has been the city is pretty aggressive about making sure we do charge for parking. They don't want to encourage it. And also, how does visitor parking sort of work in with that? But can you just address that?
Sure. So, you know, this is always a push-pull, right? The city and frankly, I would say anyone that's committed to sustainable transportation, you know, kind of a tool in the toolkit is to charge for parking, because we want to encourage people to use transit. And obviously, having employees get free parking doesn't really help to do that. On the flip side, I know, you know, if you live near a site like this and parking is charged, the concern is, will people drive and park in the neighborhood? And I think the answer here is we have to work really hard to make sure that that doesn't happen. There are obviously Cambridge stickers, resident parking stickers, and we just have to work to enforce that, because we certainly don't want that to happen. As it relates to community use of the parking off peak, the intention, I don't believe, is to charge for that. That's free parking for the community for sure, whether it's a snow emergency or weekends or that sort of thing. And I'm interested to hear from sort of people on the line, their thoughts on that. But ultimately, I think that's where this will go.
Thanks, Sean. I mean, I feel like they pay one way or another. I think, and it's the great debate. You know, if it's free, does it encourage? And there's two sides to it. The city has sort of wanted you to charge and discourage. I'm going to run through real quickly some of the Q&A that came through chat. Then I'm going to go to Freedom and Jim. Question about gentrification, development, peer review articles. I Google this all the time. I mean, it's one.
Anthony.
What's that?
Sorry, that's my question. I can sort of paraphrase.
Oh, yeah, and I get this. Go ahead. Do you want to?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Freedom Baird. I live in the neighborhood on Reed Street. Nice to see some familiar faces. Thank you for this meeting. I'm sorry I'm late to the discussion. I'm doing okay now, but I was very sick with COVID and then long COVID. I have some permanent lung damage and nerve damage from that. Get vaccinated, get your booster shot. My question is, so I appreciate the tremendous amount of work that has been done by, the professionals involved here and also the neighborhood groups. And I have heard tonight a great deal of information about the sort of physical, like what's going to be happening physically to make this project happen, take place. My concern is about the long-term effects, the very long-term effects. Like, how does this change this neighborhood 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now? Because right now, as Anthony said at the beginning of the meeting, it's a very socioeconomically diverse neighborhood, which is one of the things that makes it great. If you've ever been to our Halloween block party or our Reed Street block party, you would see that diversity and that community. And I am very concerned that a development of this kind, you know, not all developments are bad. And I looked at IQHQ's site and I saw other types of neighborhoods where development is taking place, usually in kind of downtown urban commercial districts. This neighborhood is not that. So my question is, you know, what's the 20, 30, 50-year impact on the socioeconomic diversity of this neighborhood, of this project? Thank you.
Thank you. And that's like, this is a topic. I grew up in Cambridge. I've been here for a long time. My family's been here for longer. It's a good question. What I would say about this site is it's an existing commercial site and it's been there for a long time. So, you know, in the 70s, Grace was considered to be a gentrifier. Right now we look at life sciences as a gentrifier, but it was a very, very working class, poor, you know, Nova Scotian, French Canadian, very blue collar neighborhood that has been gentrified, not by businesses, by residents who have means to pay more for housing. I would say what I think the impact hopefully will be mitigated by the culture that we're trying to work with. Like, to me, the more economically independent lower income residents can be, so they can participate in the housing market and can advance through, whether it's housing in Cambridge or elsewhere. I don't think we don't do enough to do that. We talk about it in terms of housing costs, but what we found with the interns is what these young people want is a career path. They want to get the support and mentoring that we have all had, you know, to get a relationship where they can go in for an interview and prepare and have access to jobs. So I'm proud of the fact that we're supporting the Just to Start biomedical career program. I'm excited that there's so much affordable housing being proposed so close by. And I think what you can demand of us is that we don't act like sort of the typical life science developer, that we make a commitment to employment, we make a commitment to invest in the neighborhood on a regular basis. I think in terms of impact, to me, this project is defendable because it's an existing commercial space that would either be retrofitted or redeveloped. I think having it be redeveloped creates all the benefits that we've set forth, but I think we do have an obligation to be mindful of gentrification. I don't pretend that kids from the towers are going to be walking in and doing research jobs. Like, I wouldn't even pretend to play that game, but we do have to do a better job of making sure that residents understand the new economy and feel like they can have access to it. Cambridge housing, you know, when I was 20 years ago, I wanted everyone to live in Cambridge and every kid to go to Ridge and Latin. I was possessed. You know, I've learned that not everyone is going to live here, and some folks don't want to live here. And when young people do get decent jobs and they say, I'm moving to Billerica or Stoughton, or, you know, at this point, I can live with that. What I can't live with is families being displaced, and us not doing enough to keep families that are here. So our commercial incentive payments will go to affordable housing, and like that will help. And I think where we fit in based on the culture of IQHQ is I can picture every member of this team being part of that employment connection and working with Just to Start. And I would say everyone on the call, you know, that program at Just to Start isn't going to work if all of us are not acting as mentors and participating in the employment connection. And like, if you don't know a 22-year-old child of color and you're not helping them and you're not communicating with them, none of us individually are doing our job. And so it's a great point, and I'm glad you made it, and I think we have to be called to task on it.
Thanks.
There was a question on the garage location. And Howard, I'm not sure you like highlighted that we actually shifted it already once. Can you just talk about, like, when you look at the site plan, I think it's easy to think like, why is this here? Why is it shoved into this corner or whatever? And I think we tried to get across, we're trying to build over existing disturbed areas so we can protect as much habitat as possible. But Howard, can you just speak to the garage location?
Yeah, and I'm sure others can contribute too if I forget a couple points, but thank you, Anthony.
Are you calling on me?
Yeah, James, next.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So I like everybody, I think I really appreciate all the
No,
work.
James, just Howard's going to answer the garage question, then I'll go to you. Go ahead, Howard.
So thanks, Anthony. You know, one of the goals of the project, as Sean and others explained, was to take advantage of the regional connections out to Route 2 and 16. So the attempt was to pull the garage as close to where a lot of the cars will be coming from and going to, and getting the garage as far away from the neighborhood as possible. Also to locate it on the existing parking. You know, one of the things that the garage provided flexibility that a building doesn't is that you can construct the garage in a way that it has less impact on the floodplain as well. So there was a number of influential factors that led to the garage being located there and the orientation that it's been located there. And as I mentioned and others have mentioned, we've pushed and pulled it here and there to minimize environmental impacts. So the factors of just trying to get it away from the neighborhood, get it close to the regional transportation connections, the ability to adjust it for the floodplain all led to that site location.
Okay, James, go ahead. Want to unmute James? Is someone going to unmute James?
James, you're all set to ask your question.
He looks still muted. Maybe he has to unmute. Let's see. Let's see what's
I'm sorry, did I go on too long?
No, we didn't hear you. You were
Okay.
muted.
I don't know where I got cut off.
I did my best James Williamson imitation. Go ahead. No, James, go ahead.
I don't know where what was heard and what wasn't.
Start over.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
The big picture concern that I have is that there's just too much built stuff going on surrounding the pond, which is my greatest interest here. You know, any one piece might be nice, but overall, I just think it just seems to me it's probably too much built infrastructure, and we're losing an opportunity to have some of the current feeling, even through a fence, of a sort of, you know, more naked, quote unquote, natural environment and shoreline is being lost. And I think maybe the best location to be thinking about reducing that built footprint would be along Ringe Ave. I think there are reasons to have the sort of overlook kind of on the eastern side of the pond and a boardwalk along the eastern side of the pond. But I don't think it's a good idea to have the entire pond more or less surrounded, except for maybe a section on the western side. So that's the big concern. More specifically, I think it's vitally important to get the bikes out of that congested area, and to do that, to explore how to make that connection through that tunnel, not just the legally west to east direction, but to open up the opportunity to have it also be east to west, and just overcome the bureaucratic hurdles that seem to be in the way of that. Enhancing public transportation, you know, charging for parking is one way to get people out of their cars. Another way is to dramatically improve public transportation. And the 83 bus is one way to help do that. And I'm glad to see that you're addressing the problem with the, you know, the cars that drag, not just the buses that nearly tip over the 83 bus, but also the cars. And finally, I just would like not to go into much more detail because I've already talked too long, but the stretch along the design for the mixture of the two-way bike path and the pedestrian boardwalk, I see that as problematical. And I just wonder if there could be some explanation of where we might go to dig in a little deeper into those design ideas and to have a chance to maybe shape it, because I think there's some issues with it and I don't want to go into too much of that right now.
Thanks, Jim. And you were an early voice on the conflicts at the linear path. And so we didn't do a great job of, we've widened the path going into the T-head house. We're looking at ways to further widen from the football field to the head house, because we know that is conflict ridden. And we really like the Jerry's Pond because it's a way to get pedestrians off the linear path. So we've, and you're right, like you and I have been up there enough times. There's somebody walking, checking for their Charlie card, there's a family, and then there's a bike speeding and everything in between. So we're really trying to do that. Ringe Ave, the multi-use, I get multi-use can be a concern. You know, the city put one down on Fulkerson Street next to Kennedy Park, and it works. We don't expect foot traffic and bike traffic to be very heavy on Ringe Ave. The folks on the other side of Ringe Ave usually will cross. If they're going to the head house, will come
Right,
on.
I think that's right.
We'll come over to Jerry's Pond and go that way, or some folks go to the corner. So it's based on a belief that the traffic, bike, and peds isn't going to be that heavy on that stretch of Ringe. And you know that the bike lanes can't continue there, right? Because you got Como Field, and try taking away parking at the Little League, we'll all be out of our jobs. But so we think it will work. I think pedestrians will migrate to the more the more pleasant view along the water, but I also think it will be a safer passage for bikes. ASG and others pushed us to find a place for bikes so that because it's very skinny on Ringe Ave. So we were able to.
Well, are you kind of wedded to continuing to push for this idea of a kind of a boardwalk to extend and more or less hang over the shoreline along that edge?
No, where we are now, we have expanded the boardwalk hanging over. We're not filling in the pond in order to get more real estate. So we have a pedestrian plan interior, and the city's real estate will be multi-use. But we've tried to sort of address everything and look forward to your input also interior, because I do think there's ways to minimize conflicts on the existing linear path for bikes and peds, and appreciate your leadership on that.
Well, and some signage has been mentioned. I think skillfully addressing, introducing some more effective signage is not the answer, but it's a part of a larger set of things that can and should be done there. So thanks.
No, I appreciate it. Someone asked what's the timeline? So the development area, which will include those pedestrian and bike improvements, we'll want to move forward as soon as we get permits. We've committed to moving forward on Jerry's Pond as quickly as we get those permits. And so we're not, like IQHQ hasn't said, we're not going to start until we get, lab tenants, and David has said, I'm going to go right away as soon as we get permits. So as soon as we get our Article 19 planning board permit and our order of conditions on the development area, we will begin the permitting for Jerry's Pond. So it's really, it's slow it's slow. Like just preparing to file a planning board application takes like, I wouldn't have told IQHQ this because they wouldn't have hired me. It takes like 6 months. That's how hard the city sort of vets the application process. And then this was different because we wanted to do the community piece first, and I think it's paid off. Like I have no regrets about the time spent with the community on all the facets of it. But there's no built-in delay. It's just a matter of securing permits. Are there any other hands?
Yeah, Anthony Craig is up.
Oh, can you guys unmute Craig?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks everyone for the presentation. It's been really helpful. I was curious when I joined at the start of the meeting, I believe there was a slide that covered sort of the public, I think it was like public benefit it was framed as, but basically the budget, I think it was like $13 million total, but each line item. And in continuing sort of the public transportation theme, I believe I saw 100,000 devoted toward a commuter rail study. I'd be curious if you could explain more about how you arrived at that $100,000 and also where that $100,000 specifically goes towards. You know, specific, like for example, is it going towards the city to conduct the study, a group of consultants, or in conjunction with the MBTA? Sort of the general gist of what I'm getting at, or the point I'm trying to make, is I just wonder if $100,000 actually moves the needle on that one. I know that on the adjacent Alway quad, one of the biggest concerns is access, similar to this plan as well. But given that location on the other side of the train tracks, it's a bit trickier. I do think with the commuter rail, though, if it were to ever be in place, IQHQ would be a direct beneficiary of it. I think a lot of the talent of which that would be working at these labs will be coming from Metro West, you know, whether it be Concord, Lexington, Lincoln, Sudbury, etc. Currently, as you know, and when a lot of the biotech companies and pharmaceutical companies in either Kendall Square or the Seaport, a lot of those folks, they will transfer at Florida Square to continue on to Kendall. I think, you know, I think if they were to do the opposite, mentally, that's a bit of a challenge because they would say, why would I take it there to do a 2 stops back when I can just drive my car? But then, you know, they also have the challenge of the ALY sort of congestion. I do think that putting in that the commuter rail stop would sort of have many beneficiaries, but I just do wonder, is $100,000 really going to do anything? You know, it seems like if it's just $100,000, why bother?
Yeah, can I speak to that? To be honest, we did this to show support for the commuter rail. I don't think it's a money issue. The MBTA has said we're not doing a commuter rail stop there. So that's the honest truth. And any developer that, you know, gives you false hope on that is doing just that. The question will be, as the, you know, is there a way to leverage what the T wants, meaning, you know, MBTA station improvements with some support for a commuter rail stop. The problem with the commuter rail stops is it makes the train stop, right? So it becomes a less efficient travel. And so they're very careful. It's not just about cost, about stopping the train. I wonder, as the city council pushes for quad planning and the T looks for community support to improve the station, is there some leverage there? But we put the money up. It's really not about a study. It's about the MBTA being open to a stop. And so it's really about lobbying and using whatever leverage the city has to make a case that it's a worthwhile enterprise for the T.
Thanks for that, Anthony. I appreciate sort of the candor there. I had a feeling that was going to be the likely response, you know, and I appreciate that it's ultimately up to the T. So definitely appreciate the answer provided. I just had one follow-up question too regarding the question regarding, is the parking going to be free or it's going to be paid, and sort of the trade-offs of, you know, the potential scenario where if it's paid, then you have spillover from intra-Cambridge parking in the neighborhood, which I understand is more of a Cambridge citywide problem, right? Like an Avon Hill resident all of a sudden popping up in North Cambridge, for a few hours during the afternoon. But I guess I'd be curious, is there going to be a decision made on that, like anytime soon, just for the awareness? I do recognize the trade-off. I just be curious. I wasn't sure if there was an actual answer provided. Like, is it going to be paid parking or not?
Yeah, the answer is I don't think the city's going to let us give parking away.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, it's not, and like, again, that's a philosophical, it's probably like, but that's pretty much where the city's at. So, and we think we have ample parking. David, we've agreed, as I remember, to monitor local streets and make sure that tenants are not parking in the street. We can't really get the city involved in that because they're not gonna play that role. I've tried that in the past of restricting, but we can monitor and we can put into our lease that your tenants should not park on neighborhood streets. And if they're violating local resident parking and abusing that, we can reel them in on a lease violation. We think we have adequate parking. Hopefully parking demand goes down in time. Who knows with advent of electric car or whatever, but we think we're in a good place, and the city will not want us to give it away for free because they'll think that that's going to encourage vehicular transportation.
Great, thanks for that, Anthony. And I just want to close by saying thank you for taking my questions tonight. It's been a great presentation. And also, I don't know if you saw in the chat, JP, I love the trees. You're welcome to plant some trees at my house. I live actually in the Huron Village neighborhood, so if you want to develop there, particularly in my front yard, you're more than welcome to.
Thank you, and thanks for hanging in there. It was a long presentation. Adam and then Lou.
Hi, Anthony. I played Little League in West Cambridge, but I do live in North Cambridge, and I go to Cambridge Ridge Latin. I should have probably brought this up earlier, but first of all, I want to thank you for all you do for recreation for young people with baseball and other stuff. Me and a lot of my friends in North Cambridge go down to Alston to go to the Pump Track, which is a skate park that was built near the Harvard Stadium. And we were wondering if there's a possibility to include some small park feature or some opportunities either for skate park or other space for teenagers to recreate in this new development. I'm just to kind of have a place for us to be instead of, I don't know. But I really do think skateboarding is really a good outlet for activity for teenagers in Cambridge, and I think there isn't any current infrastructure for that, and that would be a really great. And I just thank you, but if that would be something to be thought of.
No, that's a great question. I shouldn't be proud, but I was banned from Harvard property as a skateboarder when I was in high school, so I get it. It didn't stop us, but there was a proposed skate park on New Street, and it disappeared. That parking lot that's like across from Danahy, and that was proposed when I pushed it, and it kind of went off the radar. Lou and others have looked at like the T Plaza. It's got some new cool stuff. David, maybe we can look at the internal parking lot and see what's going on weekends and see if there's any opportunity. The Whittemore lots are sensitive because we do have residential neighbors there. And we don't want to create more paved areas, but maybe we can look at something on the lot that's interior and see what we can do there. It's a shame because you're right. We have one at North Point. There's an amazing skate park, right? That we took many years to get going, but let's think about it and appreciate the question.
Yeah,
hey, Anthony.
Yeah.
No. I'll send you my contact information.
No, please do. We'll stay in touch. Lou, go ahead. Can,
All right, you're unmuted, Lou.
All right, great, thanks. Hi, this is Lou Weitzman. I've been working with Friends of Jerry's Pond, but I'm really a neighbor and working with all my neighbors. It has been quite an amazing process. And I've said this during the meetings, and I want to say it publicly for those that don't come to the meetings. You really can't fake what these guys are doing. They might have done it for a meeting or two, but the development team for months and months and months has met with all of us, every group that's stepped forward, every person that's had requests, they have listened to them. And we would come back in the next meeting, we'd make a request, and we'd be shocked to find out that there were a whole new set of plans based on comments we'd made. So it was not just, there's a lot of just listening that goes on, I think, in other development plans, but these guys genuinely mean it. And I just wanted to say that publicly, because I've been very impressed with the process. I know the chair of the Conservation Commission said something to the effect that this was one of the most productive collaborations between a community and a developer that she had seen. I know for the few development processes I've been involved, this is unprecedented. So I did want to say that publicly. I also wanted to just reaffirm that we're going to continue to meet. Basically, this has been said in the group, but I wanted to sort of said to the wider community, these meetings are going to continue. These meetings are happening every week between all the community groups and whoever's invited to come in. I'm sure if other people wanted to come in and get involved, even at this stage, I'm sure IQHQ, I won't speak for you, you can say this, but I imagine people would continue to be welcome into this process. If you want to come into the process, be careful. It's like a part-time job, getting involved. And I just wanted to reiterate that there is still a lot, even though the plans are well advanced, there's a lot of things that haven't exactly been worked out. And it was made clear in these meetings that if changes were made, even up until the time that the permitting is done and the development gets going, that IQHQ has told us, and I just want to just hear tonight, is it still the plan that you guys would be as open as you've been in the past to listening to changes and thoughts? For example, Friends of Jerry's Pond still has a couple areas we like most of the plan. We think it's really incredible. There's a couple areas, particularly Jerry's Pond along the Ringe Ave. We still have a different vision, and we're trying to talk with our neighbors, convince them, and also to convince IQHQ that we may have a better thought. And we just wanted to put that out there, that is that still the operable plan, that you guys will continue to be open to different ideas and thoughts along the way from here on in? Thanks.
Thanks, Lou. Thanks for all. You've been incredibly positive from the opening subcommittee meeting, which meant a lot. You know, a lot of times developers take the position like, we're not gonna make people happy, so what's the point in trying? And to me, that is like the worst attitude. And you guys were positive. You were reiterated like you weren't trying to stop the development, and so it was easy to say yes. I think the good news is, even if we end up moving some of the flood storage to the southwest corner, we're not going to merge the two NOIs. So we still have time, to think about Jerry's Pond. And, at some point, we got to make sure how we get started on the eco center and the good stuff, because, every year that you lose, it's another generation of enjoyment. But we're going to keep working with you. And if there's a way to do something and we can pull it off, then we'll be open. Right now, we're focused on getting the portions of the site that derive revenue permitted, right? And improve the tree issue and work around flood storage. And we've tried to come as close as possible on Jerry's Ponds, and that's what's out there now, but we'll keep listening.
That's great. And someone just called here, sorry. Obviously, this site demands a certain level of, there's nothing like it. There's nothing left in the city really that of this magnitude, 27 acres, an undeveloped site. with a pond on it. And it really demands all of us. And I think you guys got this. We were very lucky, really, I feel, as a neighborhood, that you're the development team that came along. The last one wanted to put a hotel around Jerry's Pond. You guys really came in to do the right thing in the neighborhood. So I want to laud you. And I also want to task you guys to say, it's been like that. Let's finish in that attitude. This is a once in a generation opportunity to restore this pond. And there won't be anything like it. There wasn't before. There won't be really like it in the city. It'll be nothing like this. And let's just keep it at a really high standard that it's been all along. That would be my wish for the completion of the project. There's still a ways to go. Not everything in our minds is set in stone. Plus the monitoring of the development. It's easy to make a good plan, not hard to carry it out and to follow all the details. So there's a lot between now and the finish. So I'm putting it out there. Let's finish it as strongly as we have gotten to this point. And we have to monitor the safety of the neighborhood from the contaminants during the process. We have no indication other than it's going to continue at a high level, but I'm putting that thought out that let's get to the finish line and give this site it's what it really deserves. You guys put the development forward. It was really the only development that this site, the neighborhood was going to get behind. So I think you guys recognize that, and you came up with a winner so far. And if we can get to the finish line as good as we've started here, I think it's could be quite an achievement.
Yeah, and Lou, the bricks and mortar are one thing, but the Cambridge changes fast, and we're not all going to be around. And I worry about, like, who is this stuff for in 10, 15 years? Like, is a family from Ridge Towers going to realize, like, that eco center is for them? And so I hope all the folks that have participated in this process become part of the scholarship board, become part of the Justice Star program. We're going to need an interactive advisory board to make sure that the site's being used right. Like the Freedom brought up gentrification. Gentrification is as much about perception of ownership as it is, the economic divide. And I worry about that. There's still a sense of ownership, for better or for worse, from some of the folks I grew up with up at Ringe, up at Como Field. And, bad behavior notwithstanding, they feel like that's still their park. And so we got to figure out a way to make sure that as this executes, it doesn't look like a corporate play, and so we need all of you involved, because if not, I worry it's going to have the opposite effect. You fix stuff up, you make it shiny, and who do you think comes, right? Who feels entitled? So we got to work together on that. And look, you said it best. It is impossible to fake it. And David and the team are humble folks from humble beginnings. And I think, they're going to want to make sure that it gets used the right way too, but we appreciate you.
Excellent. Thanks, Anthony.
Well, we're at 9. James, as always, I'll let you have the last word, because you would anyway.
Gee, thanks. What a
Or you'll call me anyway.
I only did that because on instructions from the facilitator, he said, if you have a comment or something, raise your hand. So I didn't realize that I would be last.
Well, we appreciate you operating under your real name, if that is your real name.
I decided to drop Joey Kramer and substitute my real name. So I just wanted to make an observation. I really appreciate what the young high school person raised about a skate park. I just thought I'd mention, I was maybe the only person I'm aware of who really tried to do something about McCrean Pool. And it wasn't that long ago that there was a bowl, a deep end of the pool that in the off season was a world-renowned skateboard bowl. It was on the front it was featured in leading skateboard magazines. It was that well known and popular. And the DCR in their wisdom came in and removed all the deep ends. They'd already removed the diving boards because everything has to be, baby proofed, I guess. And then they decided to remove the deep ends. And, it was a shame. I mean, just mentioning this lost asset, we don't have to build a new one if we've been thoughtful about preserving that one. And I guess I do want to clarify, I'm not quite sure because I've heard some back and forth. So where are you at? You have this idea for a boardwalk along the Ringe Ave side of the pond. And I guess I don't really quite understand, like, this is sort of what you've settled on, and it's your intention to go forward with something more or less along the lines of what was kind of, somewhat vaguely sketched out tonight? Or, what kind of room is there for a modification of that plan that might actually include, for example, not having a boardwalk there, maybe making adjustments, maybe allowing for space for a two-way bike lane and a pedestrian zone? But so, I'd just like to try to understand a little better, how far along and
Yeah,
how
James,
open
that's
to
the
change
plan.
you are
I mean,
on that
we
piece of the plan, because that's the thing I think, and
Yeah.
that would include crosswalks and other dimensions to
so,
that. But that's what
James,
the people on this side of Ringe Ave, I think, are most interested in, are going to be, care most about, are going to enjoy or not enjoy. So if you
yeah.
could just explain a little more
Well,
carefully, where is that at?
James,
Thank you.
that is the plan. The city is not interested in jamming crosswalks in between traffic because there's a crossing now that is probably in the right place. And I think we'll let city folks respond, but just putting crosswalks in doesn't make it safe. We like the boardwalk. We think the community likes it, and we think it's going to be awesome. I mean, we've sort of done the best we can, and the plan is what it is. So no, like, we're not reconsidering the interior boardwalk. We think it's one of the biggest assets of the plan, and based on the amount of traffic, we don't think the multi-use path is going to be dangerous. So obviously we can continue the conversation, but this isn't a sketch. This is a plan that we're gonna move forward with.
Well, I'm glad because that wasn't clear, and I'm glad.
Yeah, no, that's where we're at. Let me just thank everyone. Obviously you can reach us through our website. We get emails, we respond. We're all pretty well known to you by now. We'll keep updating the website with materials, and hope that all of you stay engaged. And thanks to ASG, I know you folks are going to hold a meeting and continue to work. So this is not pencils down. And thanks. 2.5 hours is no small commitment. I hope you guys cheated and went to the refrigerator. I didn't get to, but thank you for staying on so long. I think that wraps it up.